Good afternoon and welcome once again Aalto University's public lecture series in internet. And once again, great to see so many participants. And I think this is a very topical issue when we are talking about the future of technology in Finland. And those of you who have been listening to the previous lectures have noticed that this is a very wide area, and more or less technology is affecting everything on this globe within next years and decades as well. Today we are actually concentrating on one very important aspect of this technological development, and that is security. I will be personally lecturing first, and after me, Professor Raimo Kantola, also from Aalto University, will give another lecture. So this is very security oriented lecture time today. Juho will give in chat the code for our students in order to show your presence in this lecture, and please keep your microphones muted, and if you have questions and comments, hopefully so, please share that in chat, and we will get back to them as well. And also just a reminder from the previous lectures, the recordings are available, and you can check the links to them from this public lecture series internet page. You can find those links over there. But let's go to the topic and talk about security. And I have to say that I have been working with security issues more or less all of my life in different positions, as an active officer in defense forces, in business, and as well in academia. And I have to say that this is a very wide issue when we are talking about security and different aspects of security. And then on the other hand, I don't like that usually when we talk about security, we talk only about the threats and risks. So that security is thought to be something bad, only about the risk management. Because I think that as a starting point, security is a very positive issue. It's something that actually enables us, for example, in this technological development, it enables us to enjoy those benefits what this development is bringing to us. And as a starting point, yes, when we are talking about security, we are talking about a basic need what we all humans have. You know this hierarchy of Maslow of needs. First, we have to have this food, shelter, water, that kind of physiological needs in order to survive. But our second most important need is actually security and safety. We have to have enough security and safety in order to do issues, whatever we are doing, in order to work, in order to live, in order to enjoy our life. And actually also the Constitution of Finland's law is saying, or the Constitution of Finland is stating that security is a basic right for everybody in our country. And I would say that this same principle applies both in Constitution as well as to Maslow's hierarchy of needs to this digital environment. We often talk in Finland and internationally digital environment as cyber environment, more or less the same thing. But when we are looking for the future and thinking about the security in future, we are talking about more and more security in related to technological issues. And security is a basic need also in that development. I have several good friends who are working with future studies, and these future scientists has stated that humans, meaning us, that human life will change more over the next 30 years than in the previous 300 years. I have to say, quite bold statement. Think about it. When we are evaluating the future, 2020, we should be able to see 2050, the year of 2050, in the same way that people who were living 300 years ago should have been seeing what is happening in the autumn of 2020. So when I'm thinking about the future of the technology and the future of security in technology, I have to say that I am thinking more and more certain values than the details, what we have to keep in mind. And one key value in security is that yes, we have to be very open-minded. And we actually have to have imagination as well. In the same way as we are developing our technology at the moment. Who will know what will happen in the coming decades? What kind of revolutions and evolutions we are going to experience? Same applies to security. So security environment in this sense is changing very rapidly at the moment. And for example, in companies, you cannot think that, okay, I will do these security issues during Q1, and then I can say, I come back to security after this year. No, this security environment is changing very fast. This is like a continuous process, what we are living. And certain surprises are included in this development. Just think about, if I would have told you 5 years ago that we have here in Helsinki area or in Otaniemi, these kind of traffic signs, you probably have laughed. No, we can't. But this is the reality, as you know. In Otaniemi, we have these warning signs of robot cars at the moment, and these non-drown zone traffic signs you can see in several places in Finland and in other cities as well globally. My question to you is that what kind of traffic signs, security traffic signs we are having now after 5 years, which seems to be funny at this moment. So there are 3 key principles in future studies when we talk about the future. And I think this is important everybody to understand. First of all, we cannot predict fully what will happen in the future. Second point is that no one has decided that this is the way that future will look like. So future is not predetermined. But the third point is the most important. We can affect what the future will look like. We can affect what the future will look like. And especially at this moment, when we humans are developing technology faster and in more radical way that we have never done before, the security issues can really be and should be affected into this development in this same radical way. And maybe on the other hand, we should be also asking that, for example, we keep repeating that everything that can be digital will be digital sooner or later. And we are actually, the main target of the digitalization, as you know, is actually humans at the moment. We are digitizing human brains. But my question is that should we really digitize everything? Even if we are living in one of the most digitized countries in the whole world, Finland, I think we have done in Finland very important decision, and I strongly support that at the moment we are not digitizing our elections because of the security reasons. Elections could be digitized, but because of the security, we are still trusting, and that's very good, the good old paper and pen, meaning physical paper and pen. And when we are talking about security, of course, things can change pretty fast. And now we are still experiencing COVID-19 time, as you very well know. And this has meant many new aspects to the security, this COVID-19 time, what we are living at the moment. This pandemic does not, I see it, change everything, but for sure it will reinforce some of the changes that has already been underway. So I would say that the speed of the digitalization and the importance of the digital security is speeding up because of this COVID-19 situation. And at the moment, when I'm following what is happening nationally here in Finland, as well as internationally, we can say that the security of this digital environment, human-made technology-based cyberspace or cyber domain is more important than ever what we are experiencing at the moment. And we all know that some laws are quite different in this digital domain than in physical world. For example, I think here in Finland, we don't have to be worried about the Brazilian criminals in physical world because they are on the other side of the globe. They can't threaten us. But in digital world, cyber domain, we have to be aware of Brazilian cyber criminals because they can be here. They can threaten us. And when usually these criminals, we are experiencing this Vastaamo case now in Finland, they are motivated by money. They are more and more active and more sophisticated in cyberspace because that's where the humans and that's where the money nowadays more and more are. And this is actually one of the latest tables from Interpol describing the increase of the cyber crime during the corona time. So don't get me wrong, many good things has been transferred from the physical world to digital world, and that is a good thing. It's increasing efficiency, cost efficiency, and so on. But then on the other hand, many bad things has been coming from the physical world to this digital world as well. And for example, this different kind of phishing and fraud examples we are experiencing here in Finland increasingly at the moment. But of course, it's not only about the criminals. The cyberspace, this technological dimension is very strategic dimension also, for example, to nation states. And these kind of risks areas, which are presented in this table provided by Institute for the Future, describes quite well what kind of risks we have to be able to deal with in the coming years. And I have noticed lately that in different international working groups and discussions, I am discussing with my colleagues more and more often that what will be the future internet look like. And I think the only thing that we can agree is that the internet that we know now in autumn 2020 will be quite different after 5 years. But what this quite different actually means, that's something that we will see. But for sure, in this internet infrastructure, for example, when certain nation states are building their own internets, there are going to be changes. And that kind of strategic thinking is really needed. That, for example, in Finland, how we are able to live with this situation when this internet changes. Or these big global technological companies, the power of them is increasing. What is the European Union's role and the companies who are coming from Europe in this development? At the moment, it's not so good. But of course, within this Corona time or COVID-19 time, which is still continuing, lots of things has happened already and will happen. First of all, of course, this COVID-19 crisis has been testing our contingency plans in practice in many ways. Then on the other hand, when we have been more and more active, and I mean us humans in digital world, depending on technology and different technological solutions and services, the general feeling of insecurity and also the false feeling of security, unfortunately, has been increasing. Then there has been quite a lot of discussion lately that, for example, these different video conferencing services, what we are using, they are coming from, in Finland, from the United States. Is that a good thing? Or are there any good, for example, European options? Those kind of discussions has been increased. Media literacy has been emphasized. I think we start to understand also the wider audience that how dependent we are nowadays on these digital services and how important the security of this digital world, meaning cyber world, is already. And also in these digital societies where we are living, how important the functionalities of digital networks and digital services are nowadays. They are playing a critical position. Unfortunately, different vulnerabilities has been quickly exploited for different malicious cyber purposes. And this, as mentioned, COVID-19 situation is accelerating the digitalization services. And for example, biometric identification, mobile location technologies and services are increased. And of course, we don't know for sure how successful, for example, certain cyber espionage activities has been, because those kind of effects we can see after a while, maybe even after a year. And I have heard too many times, to be straight, that this COVID-19 pandemic has been a black swan something that we were not able to predict or foresee. And I say that is wrong. We have been talking about this kind of possibility of global epidemic for a long time. In a security language, I think it's better to call this COVID-19 as gray rhino, using that term, meaning that yes, we know that this threat exists. When that will happen, it will have very big consequences. But in one way or another, we neglected our preparations to face this threat. And that kind of threats and risks are being called as gray rhino. And of course, in security circles at the moment, we are thinking about that what could be the next gray rhino after COVID-19 pandemic, or even happening at the same time. And probably the best guess what we are having at the moment is cyber related. Could cyber pandemic be the next gray rhino? With question mark. And for example, I am part of the World Economic Forum's expert network, and these kind of issues we are thinking about in that network at the moment. And World Economic Forum has stated that we should be prepared this kind of global pandemic, which is caused by different disturbances in digital environment. So as a starting point, when we are talking about the technology, this technological environment, digital environment, I think we are not talking about a certain technological details, which are important, but as starting point, when I'm thinking about the cybersecurity and importance of it, I would say that in that sense, we are talking about that how we are able to protect our societies, our businesses, and our way of life. But the reality where we are living at the moment, and especially heading to the future, is that I think it's the human mind that we like to separate, that it's this physical world, this world of atoms, and then there is this digital world, the world of bits. And the big trend, as I mentioned earlier, is that the different kind of activities, good and bad, are being transferred from the physical world more and more to digital world. But from the security point of view, I think we are little by little moving to the world that actually these two different worlds, physical and digital, are becoming more and more intertwined. So probably even in the near future, when we are talking about cybersecurity, we get rid of this term cyber. We just talk security, where these technological and digital issues are strongly involved. For example, I know that certain European countries are thinking about nowadays that are they going to write any more national cybersecurity strategies, or just security strategies where these digital issues are fully integrated. And I think that's the way forward where we are heading. But coming back to the security, what is security? How you define it? And when you want to strengthen security, what you have to do? In a nutshell, as my opinion, I think security consists of 4 different areas. First of all, it's about the reality. We have to change the reality in order to maintain or increase security. For sure, that's important. The second point, security is always a feeling. It's very personal feeling. It's like also personal perception of this reality. And in order to feel secured, we have to be able to strengthen the feeling of security. And this is something what we are discussing in security studies at the moment more actively, that how well this so-called objective reality, objective security, and our personal subjective understanding of this objective reality go hand in hand or doesn't go hand in hand. And how we can be affected in this technological era, our feelings, our perceptions, without even changing the reality. The third aspect or area of the security is resilience. And this is something what we have been discussing in Finland during the last few days a lot. There isn't, and most probably never will be, absolute security, 100% security. We have to be able to have the functional and mental resilience to cope with those situations where things are not going in the way that we planned. And the fourth point or fourth area of security is culture, based on certain values, based on certain rules in society, for example. And culture changes in a slow way. And actually at the moment we are creating, affecting that kind of technological and digital era security culture, what we want to create. And as we have noticed also from news, that preparing to certain risks and threats, it's much cheaper than dealing with crises. But looking for the future, you remember my second slide, humanity may change more in next 30 years than in previous 300 years. It means for the security that we cannot only build these walls around the assets what we want to secure. Because how we act in that situation when they, whoever they are, when they get inside the walls. And that is called resilience. How you live with that. If someone gets in, if something bad happens, like this Vastaamo leak, data leak, and blackmail what we are experiencing in our society at the moment, which is a very big issue. How we are able to live with that, how we are able to support those victims, how we are able to catch those criminals, how we are able as a society come out a stronger society than we were before the crisis. And for example, according to this research, and this was done actually 2 years ago, almost half of the Finnish companies are nowadays saying that they would be inoperative after 1 day without internet. And I think that today, 2 years after this research was done, the 33% number is higher. Really? Like half of our companies in Finland are not able to operate if there are no internet. What kind of resilience we should build here? And these kind of, not only thinking about this COVID-19 situation, but thinking about the modern security, including those digital and technological security issues, these are the key questions. When something bad, unexpected, or something nasty happens, how we are able to maintain operational activity, how we are able to maintain both mental and functional resilience, how we are able to get out of the crisis as quickly as possible, and how we are able to get good information and practices from other countries, from other companies, that we are not repeating same mistakes and problems what they have experienced. These kind of resilient questions are more and more important when we are talking about the future of the security. And from the companies and organizations point of view, security is not primarily a certain details. We need those details for sure. But for them, security is about taking care of your brand value, taking care of your business continuity or activity continuity, and especially taking care of customers' trust. And as you have noticed during this public lecture series, there are many big trends in technological development ongoing at the moment. And all those trends have big security implications. And one of the mega trends, what I think the experts are quite worried at the moment, is the development of the IoT, Internet of Things, or IoE, Internet of Everything. Because we are living the era at the moment where more or less everything, literally everything, is going to be connected to internet. How we are able to maintain security with this speed. And this is going to be a very big issue in the coming years. And in this development, security cannot be something that you may consider afterwards and may think about it later. It cannot be like an afterthought. This is the issue that you have to involve your processes, your development, whatever you are connecting to internet from the day one. In a way, it has to be built in using the security by design principle. And I call that as responsibility as value. And in this development, what I have learned is that complexity is actually usually for the users the biggest enemy of security. Even if you have very secured systems and very fancy systems, if they are complex, they usually don't work. They are insecure. So in order to maintain security in this technological era, especially from the users and consumers' point of view, we have to be able to simplify. Because otherwise it does not work. Maybe even bigger issue than that everything literally is going to be connected to internet is the data explosion and how these data flows, including physical sea cables, data storages, analytics, and so on, how that is going to develop. Because we are really living the era of data explosion and what kind of implications that will have to security as well. And this has been quite interesting to see, for example, within last 10 years, it was more or less 10 years ago, the fossil fuel were the main asset of the world's biggest companies. But not anymore. The main asset of the biggest companies in the world at the moment, it's the data. And this is the trend. And quite often it's our data. And it has been said that those who will own the data will own the future. And now we are creating the culture that how we are also from the security point of view, collecting and analyzing the data, and how fair or unfair or transparent way that is being done. And from security point of view, we come back to this, in these discussions, we come back to this quite old information security triangle when we are talking about the data's or information's confidentiality, availability, and integrity. But what it seems to be at the moment, that maybe the biggest challenge in the future from the security point of view is not that, for example, someone breaches into your system and steals your data or deletes your data, but manipulates it. So you lose the integrity of your data. And it has been interesting to see that, for example, in United States, the risks of data manipulation has been defined already one of the key threats to the national security of the United States. When talking about the security, technology, and future, I have to say that even if I have been working with these security issues for a long time, I have to say that this is one of the trends that I am paying more and more attention at the moment. I think that the next big technological trend is actually us. It's humanity. And these are very big questions. So thinking about the future of the technology and security, we are actually talking about humanity as a value. Because little by little, we are moving to this new phase. Like, for example, what Meri Haataja was lecturing earlier, that we are not anymore primarily asking that what kind of different things we cannot asking more and more that, okay, we can do different things with technology, but should we do it? Should we use technology for these kind of solutions? And those are actually very ethical issues. So, for example, what kind of values are driven by technology that we are using in the world? And as you know, there are different kind of values how technology is being used in different countries. We have already technology, but should we use it? And I think people who will work in the coming years and in coming decades with technology and affecting this technological development will face more and more ethical questions. And I think when we are talking about security by design as one principle in this development, I would add another principle, and that is the ethics by design, whatever technology we are creating. So the more technology we create or have, actually the wiser and more ethical we people should be, because we are just beginning in this development. And I think one of the key points from the security point of view here is that how we humans, how we are able to keep the pace with this development of technology. Talking about our knowledge, our skills, for example, to work, to interact in, for example, in this digital environment. We are talking about the humans. And in this technological development, also from a security point of view, Human should be in the center of this development. So this is the new normal in security, how I see it. It has three key features. First of all, the first part of new normal in security is that we are living the time which I would like to call unpredictable instability. And it's not only a bad thing, it's a good thing as well. Things are changing very fast and also sometimes in surprised way. The second point is the complexity, how more or less everything is affecting everything, also from security point of view, and how we are able to have this holistic understanding of this development. And the third feature of new normal in security is that the different dichotomies, like this digital, physical, they are getting more and more blurred. So let's look at this, the speed of change, and each of these three key features. As you noticed, COVID-19, even if it was not a black swan, it is the gray rhino, it has changed the world quite rapidly in a big way. In a way that we were not able to see 1 year ago. And especially when we move to the digital world, and then we can really start thinking about and using that imagination, talking about the black swans, the development is much faster. This is, for example, a very good document to read. If you are interested in, you can find it in the internet. This is the from the report from the NATO's scientific board, how they see what are the key technologies that will affect the warfare, to security. And the key point of this whole document is that they don't see that there is one certain technology that will have a very radical effect, but combined, these certain technologies will have radical consequences, like they are describing in this picture. And there are political dimensions as well. These are not technological issues, are not that only people who are working with technology are thinking about. These have very strong security policy, foreign policy dimension nowadays. For example, how President Putin has said that whoever becomes the leader of AI will become the ruler of the world. Or, for example, what is happening in this technology battle. Some people even call it technology war at the moment between China and United States. It's not about the technology primarily. It's about the security policy. It's about the foreign policy, and it's about the economical issues. And these are going to be more and more mixed in the coming years as well. The second feature, like I mentioned, is the complexity. And I would like to refer here to the World Economic Forum's latest global risks assessment. And in that document, very good to read as well, you can see this picture. There are many different threats and risks what World Economic Forum is estimating that we are facing nowadays. But the main picture is not this one, or what are the main threats at the moment. The main picture in that whole document is actually this one. How strong interactions there are nowadays between different threats and risks, between physical and digital world, between water crisis, terrorists, and cyber attacks. And this is the complexity that we have to be able to understand as well. So when we are talking about the future of jobs, you can see what has been for 5 years in the first place: complex problem solving. And that's what the security in the technological era actually is. And the third point, last point, is the blurring dichotomies. Like I mentioned, these different dichotomies are blurring: war, peace, internal security, external security, digital, physical, the security of the society, the future of individual. Those different dichotomies are blurring in this technological era when we are thinking about security. And one point what I want to emphasize to you, especially when we are talking about this digital environment, usually in a simplified way, of course, it can be divided in these 3 different layers of this cyberspace or digital world. And usually we are concentrating on these software issues, logical layers, or we are talking about this physical layer, like physical sea cables, which are transmitting more or less 98% of all data in the world. But the key trend is connected to this social layer, and we can call it cognitive cyber. And that comes back to the second area, what I presented to you earlier, when we are defining and thinking about the security. Objective reality, how things really are, and then each one of us are having their own subjective understanding, perception of this objective reality. And in a nutshell, I would say that the biggest cyber battles or battles in the technological era will be fought over our thoughts, our opinions, our values. And in this sense, the technological development is really rapidly developing at the moment. For example, thinking about these deep fake videos or voice manipulations. And in this world, as you know, we don't have these physical borders. This is very well said that in the physical world, this COVID-19 biological virus is spreading, but much faster is spreading this infodemic, the virus of lies, which don't have physical borders. And the last point, what is the most important, is the simple question what I face from security in security issues nowadays, more and more often, is actually the trust issue. To whom and what you can trust. And trust is actually the key value when we are talking about the future of technology and security. And nowadays, when we teach these issues, security management, risk management, cybersecurity issues, this is actually the framework what we use quite often. And the only thing that I want to mention at the moment is that you can see that in the center of this framework, there is no word security or safety. There is word trust. Because if you don't have trust, you don't have much left. And trust and security, they go hand in hand. And little by little, it seems that we are moving from the world where our starting point is not that we are fully trusting but moving to this new paradigm that we don't have trust at all. You have to first earn that trust in order to get to be trusted. And this paradigm of trust seems to be changing. And following these simple lines that do what you say and say what you do, and integrity as a value. And I think that's one, thinking about the Finland and our offering, our companies, I think that's one of our key competitive advantage, that we can be trusted. For example, in cybersecurity, we have excellent companies here in Finland. You can read more about them in the web page of fisk.fi, Finnish Information Security Cluster, or for example, in this very good book published by Business Finland, presenting all these solutions what we are providing. And the trust itself is becoming very valuable, intangible capital for companies and societies when we are talking about and thinking about the future of the technology and security. Thank you. Good. Hey, thank you very much for listening. I will next look at the chat, but I don't want to keep my excellent colleague, who is somewhere in the space I can see at the moment, Professor of Networking Technology from Aalto University as well, Raimo Kantola. Hello, Raimo.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. And,
yes, and you are somewhere up in the air.
Yeah, sure. This tool allows to choose the background, so this is my background.
Excellent. It was just a few days ago when I was watching the evening news and you were commenting these 5G issues. So now I can really see that you are in that kind of environment as well.
Yeah, later today I'll be, I have been told that I'll be on an interview on MTV news, and then there's a late night kind of actual program where there should be an interview as well, a wider one on these issues about this Huawei and 5G and this sort of thing. Okay.
Excellent. But hey, very nice to have you here, Raimo, and looking forward to hear your lecture. Please, floor is yours.
So Jarno gave a talk about the social layer of security and sort of like the human-centric view and society-centric view of security. And sort of on a very secondary role in that was the technology. My talk is about the technology, what is currently happening and what are the opportunities and what are the threats related to security in that area, and what is the direction where we should go in terms of security in the technology domain. So cloud technology is now coming to the networks themselves because of 5G. 5G network itself is cloudified in the sense that the network functions are virtual machines or containers on a virtualized Linux typically, right? Okay, they be using another operating system, but that's just a technical detail. So this cloudification then, when we take an angle of security, what is it that we can do with the cloud technology for the sake of security? That is my topic today. So these are some of the items on my agenda. I'll start with 5G so that you'll have some idea of what kind of context we are talking about, and how is that different from the internet. What regulatory issues are there that relate to this emergence of 5G, and there is one, net neutrality, that relates to security. So I'll talk very briefly about that as well. Then I'll talk about the overall role of cloud in terms of IT and IT services, and where they are going, and what are the benefits that we are reaping from the cloud technology. Then the proposed solution that I have is cooperative security, and I'll talk about why is that the direction that I think we should be going to, and what does it mean on a very, very high level, without going into any of the details. So the solution that I'm proposing is called customer switching. So very, very briefly about that, and what is the role of the ISP and the mobile network operator in deploying that and providing security to end systems, and what it could be, and how we could deploy this. There must be a path in terms of business and technology to deploy anything new. And then finally, I'll summarize. All right. So 5G, what is that? So it is a generation, a new generation in mobile technology. And it's typical of mobile technology that it has been introduced by generations. And these are like something that happen each 10 years approximately. So we had the second generation in practice that was called the GSM system. You know about it and you have used it. Then in about 10 years, we had the 3G, and we are all users of the 4G technology today in Finland. So that's the latest mainstream technology available on the markets. And from this year on, then 5G deployment has started. Actually, it started already 2019. So today in China, what I have heard, 400,000 base stations in 5G have been deployed. The Americans, for the first time among these generations, have taken mobile technology seriously in 5G, and lots of spectrum has been made available to the operators, and the licenses have been awarded in the United States. In Europe, the deployment of 5G is lagging behind, and one reason is that the spectrum allocations actually, or assignments, have really not been done in many countries. Some spectrum might have been allocated, but not all of it have been allocated. And for example, as we speak, in Sweden, they have some kind of 5G spectrum auction ongoing. In many European countries, there's a lot to do on that front still. What is 5G? Very briefly, a Nokia research fellow told that you can, like we say in Finnish, with 5G, you can go 1000 ja 100. So it gives 1000 megabits per second downlink and 100 megabits uplink speed, roughly speaking. That is the kind of thing that you can expect from 5G. So first of all, the generation is a marketing campaign. It gives new frequencies to use or new spectrum to use, and therefore new base stations are needed. And then as a result, we have a leap in bandwidth and bit rates and features. We have a leap what we can do with the technology. And this current technology, 5G, it's different from the previous generation, particularly in the fact that it's not meant only for consumers, but also for corporations. And we call them vertical markets, sort of corporate markets where corporate data is carried over 5G networks. And like serious, not toy like data, but serious production and economy related data is carried over 5G. overall, this idea of generations in mobile technology has helped to pace the development. It's like this is a mechanism that the mobile industry uses to sort of make sure that everybody sings the same song, right? If we had many songs being sung at the same time, it would be a cacophony, but when you have generations, then everybody's singing the same song, and then technology development has speeded up quite quickly. 5G doesn't come in one big chunk. It comes in releases, and we are now working on release 16. Forthcoming is release 17. And sort of the first thing to come to the market was this enhanced mobile broadband. It's already there, and it comes in two flavors. One is the non-standalone, depending on 4G. So you need a 4G base station to use the 5G base station. And then at the moment, we are sort of bringing this standalone mode where the 5G is truly independent of the 4G. And in order to use or build a 5G network, you don't need any 4G at all anymore. So this is just coming today. So it's early days. And some of the devices on the market, they support both of these modes, but not all of them. Then the next big use case that is being brought to the market in 5G is the ultra high reliability and low latency services, URLLC, right? So this is something that could be used in the industry. So when you need reliable data in a control loop, you might want to sort of carry it in a reliable manner over the 5G with low latency, and then a control mechanism that you are sort of controlling something in the industry, something in the smart grid or something like that. Then you could do it over 5G when 4G cannot do it. You know, we have seen this happening in our research that indeed there are particularly jitter delay variation issues in 4G that we can solve with 5G. Then 5G also brings the idea of slicing, and that is about tailoring the network to a use case, right? So how is 5G different from the internet? We know internet is on the left-hand side. The one big difference is, of course, that 5G is really just about a virtual wire from the end device to the edge of a packet network, such as the internet or any other packet network that is connected to the mobile network. So it's a virtual wire that you get as a result. But 5G to 5C device directly, it is an exception, device-to-device communication. But with the help of network, 5G network itself, you cannot communicate device-to-device because you have to have an internet or some packet network there in between the two devices. Okay. Network is tailored to use case instead of best effort. For example, we have edge computing, we have resource allocation for a use case with slicing, right? Identity is very clearly defined in 5G, like in earlier mobile generations as well. There's a SIM card, a secure tamper-proof device on the end host that allows to identify the user, no problem at all. Better than the banks can identify their customers. And this is an important feature of mobile networks because mobility per se will not work without clear identification. And the security actually in 5G networks is quite decent when security in internet is just a matter of, how you happen to build it. What is the engineering? How is the engineering done in your part of the internet or on your device? So why is the tailoring idea brought into 5G? It's because providing high reliability, high bandwidth, and low delay at the same time is very, very, very expensive. So we need to make compromises for the use case. And in order to do these compromises for the use case, we need different mechanisms that we can use to allocate the resources, their amount and their redundancy and so on per use case. This way we can optimize the network and the use of the spectrum for different use cases, and everybody should be happier as a result. Security is one aspect of tailoring. The opposing feature or sort of attitude to this concept is the internet concept of internet access services that should follow the principle of net neutrality, which says that every packet is the same. It should be treated in the same way and equally well, right? A completely different approach, right? There's conflict in a way on a paradigm level between 5G and the internet. In 5G, we have also the compute element within the network. When we say that we are virtualizing and the computing in 5G and using compute elements, virtual machines, containers, it means that the cloud technology has been brought and integrated into the network itself, right? This doesn't mean that it runs on Azure or AWS or anything like that. It will run most likely on telco cloud, but that is a bunch of Linux computers in a cupboard owned by the operator. And then this data center computing platform is virtualized and you run the 5G software there. According to the net neutrality principle, until lately, when cloud was owned by the MNO, then it was part of the network and you could execute one program there because you had to treat every packet the same, right? So now this regulation on net neutrality has been developed further, and last June this year, new regulations came out of the body of European regulators on electronic communications. They give the guidelines to people like the Traficom in Finland. And this says that if there's a service that the Googles and the Facebooks and similar can implement for the end customers, then the telcos should be able to do it as well. So if they can use their cloud platform or the virtual computing platform to provide security services, then they could do that. And sort of like differentiate the security service that they offer to their customers, which they could not do before this new regulation. So what is the role overall of the cloud computing in IT now and also in 5G? It's about why is it that we in offices move more and more software to the cloud? And the answer is, of course, saving operational expenditure. By centralizing the software into the cloud, we can save expert time because lots of the management of the software can be automated on the cloud platform. It's a different story if you have software in lots of computers and you need this people to go around and sort of directly on the device or on the host or on the computers or to do the software upgrades and so on. Or you have to rely on people to keep their software up to date on their computers. That is a different story. In 5G, we have the edge computing for gaming purposes, for entertainment, for caching data, for collecting the sensing data from the real world, and then aggregating it and sending knowledge or information to somewhere where real decisions are made. Raw data being left at the edge. Security processing also could benefit from edge computing. And one important result of edge computing is that low delay between the client and the sort of server end running on the edge can be achieved, and then very responsive services can be provided to the end customers. Okay. Another sort of motivating factor is that there's a great shortage of cybersecurity skills in Europe and also in Finland. One data says that in Europe, we now need 3 million, more than 3 million new cybersecurity experts in order to provide high quality security, cybersecurity to all the internet users, right? This is a number completely unrealistic. Whatever we do, we cannot educate that many people. Also, FISC, that was mentioned in the previous talk, says that we need 20,000 new security experts in Finland. Well, you know, think about how many people are graduated from technical universities in this area every year, and include the polytechnics as well. And you can see that this is completely unrealistic, not doable. We don't have these people. So the only viable solution is to use automation in software management and security management to achieve a professionally managed security service. And you know, then it means that the security should not run only on the end device, but it should run in the cloud for the end device. Okay. Why has this not been taking place in the area of security? And my answer is that very simply because this approach would require that the ISPs and the mobile network operators would take an active role in providing security services to end customers, but they have been forbidden to do so. The net neutrality regulation has put them into a straitjacket, and they must treat security as something that is free and sort of provide it because somebody told them to provide it, rather than an area where they could differentiate their service and maybe try to earn some money out of it. And if you cannot earn money, why should you sort of be so serious about it? Okay, particularly when the regulator is sort of breathing into your neck and telling you what you can do and what you cannot do. Okay, but because now the regulation has been changed, it means that there's a new opportunity here. And those who sort of catch this opportunity, they will make the money out of it, right? Then let's look at the threat picture. What is the specific 5G specific threat? How does it look like in terms of security? So the devices are very powerful. 5G devices are very powerful indeed. And the connection to the internet is like uplink at 100 megabits per second, right? So each device or a bunch of devices could be a very powerful attack tool in the hands of the hackers. On vertical markets, we have many critical infrastructure use cases, industry, healthcare, traffic, and in this merger of the digital and the physical worlds, Jarno was talking about the intertwining of the digital and the physical. Yes, this is happening. 5G and 6G are largely about this merger of the two worlds. So if security is done poorly, then hackers can start killing people, or by accident they can start killing people by digital means, right? So whatever was digital becomes physical because of this intertwining. This whole concept of Internet of Things, in my opinion, is completely flawed, because Internet means that anybody can send anything to anybody, right? In this interface between the physical and the digital worlds, we don't need that. It's very dangerous. It will lead to a security nightmare, right? In addition, of course, we have these classical internet security threats, the distributed denial of service, ransomware, espionage, and what have you. And particularly when then we are talking about this interface, we talk about the national digital infrastructure that is more and more important for societies, then also for the foreign governments. This becomes a very, very attractive target in terms of sort of like persistent attacks or capability to pressure a country to do something that the other country wants. So let's move on to the solutions. So the classical or the current approach in mobile networks is that the security is about the subscriber to mobile network operator relation. It's about authorized customers being provided a service and authorized network devices providing the service. While the end device security is up to the end user. If you have a laptop, you are responsible for its security, right? Or you are responsible for the software on your smartphone. Alternative that we work on is this idea of cooperative security, where all the good guys work against the bad guys, right? And this requires that the operators take a role. It requires an agent of the end device on the cloud platform, on the path of the packets from the end device to anywhere on the internet. So this sort of a agent of the user or a twin of the user's device, which is very security aware, and does the security or most of the security processing is on the path of the device and whoever is the destination. And that agent must be close to the end device so that no additional delays are introduced. Now, this sort of architecture is now feasible in terms of regulation. It's a question of whether we can make it fly in terms of business, right? So on a very high level, what we are talking about is that we have these originator networks, like a 5G network is an originator network, destination also. And then that is isolated by a firewall from this public services domain. It's another topic of a talk. How do we see the future of this public services domain? Is this going to be the dynamically routed IP like on the internet, or can we replace that with something else? But I won't be going into that area at all in this talk. I'll focus on these boundary nodes and what this is a sort of a cloud-based element and what we could do with that and how that could improve the current situation. So these firewalls are the trust boundaries, and they will carry the responsibility of the end device behavior. So it sort of has to represent the end device and constrain the end device if the end device is behaving badly and executing an attack. For this, they need to execute policies because, of course, the firewall needs to be tailored to the user needs, and a policy is a mechanism that can be used to tailor the behavior to the need. Device level policies could be governed in an internet setting or internet-like setting by the end users or subscribers. And these firewalls should be able to allow and deny, admit and deny an application to send and receive, right, on that level of granularity. And then, of course, there is also the operator level policies that could be handled in a similar manner, but separately from how the users govern their own policies, right? So we have a software implementation in this approach, and it's in GitHub. Sort of it's like a proof of concept level of implementation, but it also could be used for experimentation. So it turns out that basically, yeah, this is feasible. This can be done. This much we know already today. We run it over routed IP, so it means that we run it over internet, these firewalls. The firewall that you see here is a cloud-based element. It's the control plane element, and then the data plane that we use in our implementation is a Linux computer with an open flow switch and the net filter in the kernel. So these are technical terms, but like you know, the TCP/IP stack is integrated into the operating system. So on that level, we need to be able to control how the packet is processed by the computer, the data plane computer, right? But of course, this implementation of the data plane could be changed also. So with the 5G, now the boundary between the digital and physical worlds is the new battleground. It's a question of for the consumer goods manufacturers, it's about getting as much data that they are able to collect from the end users and then using that to improve their product. And then they are not really too much interested in the security side of things. They just want to get the data. So who owns the data is very key. Okay, and then who builds it and who manages the technical maintenance of this boundary is also able to hack it. So if it can be hacked, then cars will collide, containers that are carried in by sort of this huge container lifters and harbors. These containers could drop to the ground. The electricity could be messed up, and then blackouts would happen in cities. So hacking this interface is very lucrative. So it's also very important for national security, right? So basically, because of this wider footprint of 5G in the society compared to previous generations that were sort of optimized for consumers only, it will mean that the importance of 5G for society is much higher. And as a result, it's a strategic issue. Who builds it? It's a question of digital sovereignty, sort of how independent we are in the digital world of the people that we don't want to be dependent on. Okay, so basically my advice on this boundary is that do not connect everything to the internet. This whole idea of Internet of Things is fundamentally flawed. We need to have a layer of designed security that makes sure that this interface or boundary between the physical and digital worlds cannot be hacked, or at least hacking it is very, very difficult. And if it is hacked, then the problem can be contained in some way. On this, because of this boundary, then security and safety become the same thing, or they become intertwined and dependent on each other. So then finally, the question is, can we deploy this kind of thing? Because if you introduce a firewall that talks to another firewall, then it means that both ends, the destination network and the source network, need to be sort of involved in this business, right? Okay, one thing is that we could start with a limited entry to market. And then there's a term called sort of specialized network in the internet regulation. And I'm proposing to use this. Also, this concept that we have developed, we have proven that this can be deployed one network, one customer network at a time. It's not as good if the other endpoint doesn't use the same technology exactly, but at least the packets will go through. Good examples of use cases for specialized networks are banking and payments or health organizations. For example, we had this huge data leak in a private health company in Finland recently, but actually there is no good reason why that database was on the internet in the first place. And of course, the hacking took place through the internet, right? So when we say there's a specialized network, it's something that is not part of the internet. It's on the same underlying platform in terms of packet data carriage, but it's not on the internet. Okay. So we could take some application and use cases and then deploy this technology for those use cases. Isolation generically in networks is this one approach to deliver security. So clients and services over the network, they relate in different ways, one-to-one or end-to-one or N-to-M. And here's some examples of services that fall into these categories. And on the last category, we have the specialized network, which would be provided by several operators. For example, in Finland, DNA, Elisa, and Telia jointly would provide a specialized network. And anybody, any customer of those mobile operators could then use a service that would be provided securely. And the security would cover all aspects of the operation on the device and the end user's device through the network and the backend for banking or financial services. And sort of cloud-style isolation would be applied to this end-to-end process of providing a service, a banking service. You operating your bank account in one of the banks that where you happen to have money. These are not current practice at all because everything needs to be connected to the internet, but it seems to me that technically this is first of all feasible and it wouldn't be particularly expensive either, but of course we need to prove that this is the case because there's no current practice for this in a big way. But the idea would be to provide sort of like a serious professionally managed security for, say, financial services for the society. So that in order to attack these services, you would have to have a device that has a SIM card and connected to one of these Finnish operators. Then you could hack it. So you could be traced as a hacker very quickly and immediately on this network, right? What is the role of the ISP or MNO in order to provide this kind of cooperative security? This cooperative security uses a reputation-based filtering. And in order to produce reputation for every entity that is connected, somebody needs to do the data aggregation. And naturally, that can only be an ISP or MNO. So also this role requires that ISP MNO would have to partner with security intelligence providers that know about malware, and when malware is identified, then a security policy can be enforced that that malware cannot send anything to the network. Also, the mitigation needs a trustworthy party. Somebody has to set it up, this firewall, and that can only be the mobile network operator in the remote end. And when our end or edge device, our agent in the internet, security agent tells the remote end that now I don't like your guy who is talking to me. He's being too aggressive and malicious. Stop it. Then this kind of mitigation needs to be treated by a trustworthy party, and that can only be the mobile network operator. Okay, so there's a clear role there for these guys to become sort of security brokers for the end customers, if they wish to take this role, right? All right, so let's summarize. So by applying cloud technology in networks, the productivity of the IT personnel is increased. We see this happening in the offices, but now with the cloudification of the 5G network, we are trying to reap the same benefits in the telecom services. And so if we just do the same services as before, then these benefits are limited. But if we are able to sort of provide professionally managed services that are new to the operators, then there might be some new money also in these new services. And a professionally managed security for the end customers is possible only if it is managed by professionals. Okay, and application of the work of this IT security experts on the cloud platform is only possible if we scale it to millions of users. So it's like a few people, real big experts, be able to do it for the whole customer base of a mobile operator at the same time. And basically, the door to this kind of development is open. The opportunity is out there because of the new BEREC guidelines in Europe. In the United States, there is no regulation in the area of net neutrality anymore. The Trump administration abolished that idea. Then in some other countries also, we don't have any net neutrality regulation at all. But you know, now even in Europe, although we have it, it's written in a way that allows providing differentiation by the operators by providing security services to their end customers from the telco cloud. Right. All right. So that was my technology oriented talk. So if I stop sharing and go to this page once again, I will be happy to take any questions that you have. I think we have 10 minutes or something.
Yes, thank you very much, Raimo. Excellent lecture, very topical issue. If I may ask, in a little bit different way to summarize your lecture, these are pretty much nowadays also political decisions that we are making, and pretty hot ones, as you know. What would be your main message of this lecture to our political decision makers when they are thinking about the future of technology, especially in the context of 5G?
Well, I think if we take this use case of banking and financial services, right? Of course, it needs a wide agreement, and probably it needs also the political involvement in order to make this happen. And it might need some fine-tuning of some of the regulations about the banking security and what have you in order to make this happen. So the technical opportunity is there, but it doesn't mean that that it will be taken, because there's this inertia of connecting everything to the internet, right? It is a big inertia, and sort of classically we have been thinking that there's a Metcalfe's law that the more people are connected, the more connections there can be, and the higher the value of the network, right? So if we go away from that, and we see that it's happening because we have VPNs, we have the virtual private networks. Okay, there are examples why we isolate some networks from the internet. So they run on the same platform, but they are isolated. But then there's this new category that I'm proposing for societal services like banking and finance. Say that you have a house and you buy some services from company XYZ, and then you get a bill from a billing company that serves this service provider, right? And that comes in an email nowadays. You don't know whether you take it seriously or you should instead ignore it because it might be phishing or it might be a fraud, right? So what do? You call your service provider, plumbers, for example. Should I pay this bill? Following Aalto guidelines. And of course, then the transaction costs are high, right? But this political side is also an angle that needs to be taken into account when we think about really deploying something on this scale, right? Also, if we think about the health information, isolating that from the internet, that also requires a political level decision, okay? Probably by the government in this country, that they would say, don't put that on the internet at all. Use this other network that the operators will provide. And it might sort of like, in order for you to have an operating license, you will have to do this, right? So some force is needed, some authority is needed to make these kinds of things happen, right? But basically, in terms of sort of the wider political issues, there's also this technical side that we shouldn't forget that technology offers surprising new opportunities that we should be eager to embrace and use in order to improve security. And then, okay, there is like, this Huawei or no Huawei level political issues. It's a different plane. They remain, of course, but still sort of we can improve things by developing smarter technology and being smart about engineering the networks, right? And not just blindly connect everything to the internet like we have been doing until now.
How you see this? I have to ask you, because you are following very carefully this Huawei discussion, what is ongoing in Finland, and for example, referring to the decision that was made in Sweden last week, and that is very strongly connected to the theme what we both actually lectured about, and that is the trust issue. To whom you can trust, and what kind of transparent measures you must have in order to show that you can be trusted. Is this political, or what we should think about this discussion?
First of all, we should understand that all the sort of boxes that are used to build a network, they are computers. And whoever develops the software and manages the upgrade of this software at any point in time, that guy needs to be trusted. If that guy who manages the software, irrespective who produced the box, right, cannot be trusted, then you have lost it, right? You have lost it. It's clearly. So the technical management of the network is even more important than who creates the gadgets and writes the initial software. And basically, in terms of the technical plane, we are now going towards this zero trust kind of approach. You don't trust anything or anybody, and trust must be earned, like you say. So we can try to develop techniques that allow to sort of include untrustworthy the components into the whole picture, but still sort of the overall end-to-end service could be trustworthy, right? But then, of course, finally, like you say, there remains this issue. Who do we want to be dependent on? But I'm a technology researcher. Not my plane to sort of sort of take this political decision on these matters. We have more sort of serious people for that purpose in this country. Okay.
Yes, I can see that there's very active discussion ongoing in chat, but that is concentrating quite a lot about, well, I understand the situation at the moment. The healthcare, IT, cybersecurity, and how secured our, for example, digital processes and digital healthcare information are at the moment. That's pretty much, as we can all agree by reading the newspapers at the moment and media, that is a question that is being asked pretty much at the moment, and who are actually looking after that, for example, certain private companies, how they are taking care of their information security in order to maximize the security of our healthcare data. Very, very good questions and points raised. Hey, thank you very much, Raimo. I know that you are very busy, and good luck with the media as well. And thank you very much for your informative lecture.
Thank you, Jarno. And hopefully there will be more interesting lectures on this series. Actually, I was the guy who started this whole thing a long time ago.
I know, and still going on. And actually, I have to say that next time, after 2 weeks, in next lecture, Aura Salla, who is working in Facebook, she will give a lecture about the role of these technological companies. And I think that is going to be interesting. And then a person from Sitra as well will be other lecturer next time. So interesting lectures are coming.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Good.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you everybody for attending and listening and taking part of discussion. And I wish you good evening.
Good evening. Bye-bye.